Welcome back. It's 9:41. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Pip. Now, it's that time of year when we talk about turkeys. About 10 million of them are eaten in the UK every year. A quarter of those are Brits buying Christmas birds. Months in advance, of course. You do pay up front, don't you, to prepare for the big day.
John Holtby has farmed turkeys in Yorkshire for over 20 years. But last year, the industry was in crisis when over 500,000 turkeys had to be culled or died due to bird flu. This Christmas, John and other turkey farmers up and down the country are hoping for a better festive season.
There are recent cases of bird flu, so we are worried about it as we run towards Christmas.
Free-range turkeys do cost more, but with this comes a better quality of meat.
Most people think of Christmas and think of a turkey, so we're trying to provide the best possible turkey for them to make their Christmas dinner the most important dinner of the year.
And with the leftovers of the Christmas turkey, families are bound to be gobbling it into the new year. Anna Riley, GB News.
I always find them rather alarming things, turkeys.
What, when they're alive?
Yeah, they're very big and sort of aggressive, but tasty. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
She likes them when they're dead, not when they're alive.
Well, I'm sorry about that. Poor old turkeys. Right now, though, it's time for another episode of Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact.
Woohoo!
And we're wondering what you've got in store for us today. What lessons are you going to teach us?
Well, tonight, I was wondering, when you were talking about big, aggressive but tasty, I was rather hoping you were referring to me, but it was the turkeys. You worked on that sort of basis. But talking about turkeys, talking about Christmas, well, COP28, the biggest oil territory in the world, virtually, made rich by that, hosted COP28. And what happens, it was the biggest climate conference ever. They claim to have about 85,000 politicians. And groundbreaking rules is what they're saying, is that it's the beginning of the end of fossil fuel. But in amongst all of that, I thought we could unpack some of the claims that happened, because one of the most controversial things is Sultan Al Jaber, who's the chief executive of the state-owned oil company, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. He was the president. And interestingly, he got a PhD from Coventry. Did you know that?
Really?
It was rather fun,
Right.
isn't it? There you are. Talking about being sent to Coventry and things like that. But what he said is there were all sorts of claims that came out in our media, which he said were false. And so I thought we should have a look at some of those claims and actually do the benefit of a service for him, if you like, to have a look at that. Now, one of the things which emerged fairly early on was a claim, and we've got it here, I think we've got a clip as well, which we'll play in a bit. But basically, the headline in The Guardian on the 3rd of December was his claim that no science behind demands for phase-out of fossil fuel. Now,
He says there is no science behind demands for phase-out of fossil fuels.
That's fake.
He said that. There is no...
It is interesting, because that was a headline in The Guardian, and obviously it stormed a massive...
Let's keep it up for a bit longer.
Keep it up for
because you need to examine the words.
Exactly.
It's important, the words that we use.
The words are very important, because no science behind demands for a phase-out of fossil fuels. And you have to put this in the background of Greta Thunberg, when she heard he was going to be appointed the head of the biggest oil company.
Yeah.
She said it was completely ridiculous. And the most obvious conflict there can be possible if you got on that sort of basis. So what do you reckon? Do you think he said that?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't know. It doesn't make much sense. But he's saying there's no scientific reason for saying it's possible to phase out.
Well, it sounds like climate denial, doesn't it? Which, of course, going by all the things, people would say that's sort of fake.
But he's the president of COP28.
And that was the worrying thing. So it's that he basically denied that's what it was. He said he was misrepresented. But we have an audio recording, which we'll play now.
Oh, let's listen.
No science out there, or no scenario out there, that says that the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 1.5. 1.5 is my North Star. And a phase down and a phase out of fossil fuel, in my view, is inevitable. It is essential, but we need to be real, serious, and pragmatic about it.
So the actual clip there, so what he actually said, and this is why the headline is slightly misrepresented, no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase-out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 1.5. Now, that's obviously the reference to the Paris Agreement, and it's 1.5 about, basically compared to what they had at industrial levels. And just to put that into context, because people always bandy the figure about 1.5, and sometimes it's useful just to refresh what that actually talks about. It was 2015 that 195 countries signed the Paris Agreement. And what they agreed to do was limit the Earth's temperature increase to well below 2 degrees and basically strive for 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level. Now, pre-industrial level refers to a period from 1850 to 1900, and the average temperature then was about 13.5 degrees. So before the era of fossil fuels. What they're basically saying is it's going up at the moment. Currently, it's about 1.15 degrees above that. And so the difficulty is that every decade they've estimated it's going up by about 0.2 degrees. So that means we're behind that sort of promise. But to have the head of the COP28 making that sort of claim, say there's no proven science about this, would be wrong. He basically was saying he accepts the science, but what's going to happen is that we need to look at a better way of making sure there are other aspects that come into play. So it's a misleading headline, which is important to call out in history.
But that's my point I was going to make, is that your explanation of it there took about a minute.
Yes.
You can't put that on a headline.
No.
Yes.
And that's the problem with headline writers. Often are pressing it down so much that they do occasionally lose the right way of
And by and
expressing
large,
it.
though, headline writers are so clever.
Yeah.
Some of the things you see, especially on the front of the tabloids, it's brilliant. It's genius.
That was confusing anyway.
It was confusing,
wasn't a very
wasn't
good
it?
headline.
It wasn't a good headline, and I thought it was a slightly misleading thing on that sort of basis. To be kind as well, John Kerry, who celebrated his 80th birthday whilst in Dubai.
Did he indeed?
Wasn't that good? He looks
He looks
a
very
spring
good for
chicken. He looks
80.
great for 80, doesn't he?
He was very thrilled.
He was,
with the
80th
way it
birthday was
all
on the 11th of December. He said maybe it came out the wrong way. Well, I think it was probably an unfair bit of editing, and I think this is the danger, and why we always urge in this sort of section about question everything.
Yes.
We need to look at that sort of side. It gets worse, actually, because there were... you would think about, this is the claims, and I think to do him a service, because he actually, by the end of it, managed to convert a lot of the climate protesters and activists and saying, actually, he did a really good job because he got people to agree to something. And he was basically saying, look, our press is misleading. So I thought, well, here we are on GB News. We can make sure that he can watch this and say, well, we've put the record straight for him. This was the claim by President Mary Robinson, the chair of the Elders Group, and she was a former Irish president. She basically said, I read that your company is investing a lot more in fossil fuel in the future. Now, this is when they're talking about basically reducing that sort of side. So do you think she said that? Do you think he said that?
This is Mary Robinson saying
Mary
this.
Robinson said, she accused him of saying that your company is investing a lot more in fossil fuel in the future. So this is in spite of saying
Well,
that
I'm
they're going
tempted
to...
to say yes, she said it.
I'll say no, she didn't then.
She didn't. And do you think is it a fact whether he would be investing or not?
Probably. Possibly.
Well, we do have the clip, I believe.
Let's have a quick look at the clip.
Is investing in a lot more fossil fuel in the future.
Yes, ma'am, you're reading your own media, which is biased and wrong. I am telling you, I am the man in charge, and it is wrong, ma'am. You need to listen to me, please.
I'm very pleased to hear it. I'm very pleased to hear it.
It is wrong. You guys write a lie and you believe it.
Okay.
So he basically, she made the claim saying investing in the future, and he said, no, that's wrong, that the press is misleading. Today, and actually it was yesterday, but early in the morning, the Guardian headline basically had this, which I think we can see, the clip of the Guardian headline. COP President says his firm will keep investing in oil. So what they're actually saying is that he is planning to invest 150 billion over 7 years in oil and gas.
My goodness.
And that will maintain, what he's saying, it will maintain the current production levels rather than increase output. Finally, let's just...
No, we haven't got any more time. We've run out
The
of
Guardian's
time.
had some good publicity this
They've
morning.
had some great publicity. Other newspapers are available.
Good and bad, yeah. Sorry, we've got to wind up there. It's been a very busy morning, but we've come to the end of Good Morning Britain. Good Morning Britain. I've done too many of these programmes.
Get off!
GB News Breakfast, here's Saturday Morning Live.